Welcome everyone to PS 397. We are really honored to be here. Before we talk about today's event, just want to give you a quick update about what's happening at the World Trade Center. Just spoken to our OEM Commissioner, Joe Esposito, and our Fire Commissioner, Dan Nigro. As I think some of you know, just in the last few minutes, the two workers who were unfortunately dangling outside in real danger have both been saved and secured. Extraordinary effort by the FDNY got up to the floor where these workers were dangling, cut through the glass, and this was a lot of glass to cut through, very reinforced glass, but they cut through it and got to them. I want to hasten to add at the same time, the Port Authority, police, and the NYPD Emergency Services Unit were lowering a separate carriage down as a backup plan. So this is a case where our first responders were working in tandem to have not one escape route, but two, to make sure these individuals will be safe in either situation. Thank God, Plan A, which was the fire department approach to get them out through the window that was cut through, has succeeded, and both of them are safe. I want to give a lot of credit here to our first responders, FDNY, NYPD, OEM, Port Authority Police. Everyone worked in tandem, great coordination, great care was taken on the ground to create a space to make sure that if, God forbid, the carriage had fallen, that people below would not be harmed. So fast and effective response by our first responders, and these individuals are now safe. Before we go into the subject at hand, I just want to see if there's any initial questions you have on this. There will be a further briefing momentarily by our OEM Commissioner, Joe Esposito, but I just want to see if there's any initial questions you need before we go into the event here.
Mayor, can you, on the window washers thing, what is your understanding of, was anyone injured and what the reason for this happening is?
We don't know the reason why the carriage became insecure. There's obviously going to be an investigation to figure that out. To the best of my knowledge, at this moment, neither of the individuals was harmed, thank God. Again, they are both safe. So as far as this moment, I have not heard of any injuries. Any other questions on this? Okay, thank you. So again, it is a real honor to be at PS 397, otherwise known as the Spruce Street School. This is a already renowned school. It's a fairly young school, but it's already renowned. It's a beautiful facility, as you can see, and a lot of people helped make that happen, particularly Speaker Silver, who played a big role in the creation of this school. The principal, Nancy Harris, originated the idea of the school, saw it through to completion, first in another location, now here. So she gets a lot of credit for having built something extraordinary. Let's thank our principal. And it is really wonderful for those of us at City Hall thinking every day about education issues. There's a school right here across the street. There's obviously kids learning in the Tweed building. It keeps us focused to see the children we're serving right here on our doorstep, and this is a case of so much good happening for our children. A lot of people contributed to what we're here to celebrate, which is the completion of the first wave of our pre-K effort. And there's so many people to thank, and you're going to hear from some of the folks up here, but I want to thank three people in particular really day in, day out built the apparatus that got us to over 53,000 kids in pre-K. And of course, our Deputy Mayor Richard Bury, who led the effort and through thick and thin and on an incredibly tight timeline, our Chancellor Carmen Farina, who has been an outstanding leader of our school system and believes deeply in the power of early childhood education, and the guy who has to pay the bills, our Budget Director, Dean Foulahan, who was creative and focused throughout to make sure the resources would be there for pre-K. They all deserve a lot of credit. And of course, our elected officials, you'll hear from them in a moment, who were extraordinarily supportive throughout this process. Now, on September 4th, we launched Pre-K for All, and you'll remember on that day, more than 51,000 kids were in place. So on September 4th, 51,000 kids plus showed up at their schools in their seats, including here at the Spruce Street School, which added a whole full day pre-K classroom as a result of the expansion. We said from the beginning our goal was to get past 53,000. We thought that the need was there, the demand was there, and we could do it even on the tight time frame. Well, I'm here to say today that we are happy to announce that we do have a final figure, and it's a great figure for the number of kids who are getting full-day, high-quality pre-K in New York City today. 53,230 in seats as we speak. And that's an accomplishment that everyone up here deserves credit for. I can safely say no one deserves more credit than Speaker Shelley Silver. And that is because this was not a new idea to him. Shelley Silver was working on this idea, not for just years, for decades. I could never have been in the position to achieve this full-day pre-K program if it weren't for the work he did years and years ago, and in the last year, where he was the strongest voice in Albany and the person who so many times helped us find the way forward so we could achieve this for our children. You're going to hear from Shelley in a moment, but I really like to give credit where credit is due. This is the culmination of ideas put forward by Shelley Silver years ago, and I'm glad that he was the person who shepherded it through to completion. Now, the enrollment numbers are part of the story. The programs themselves, the quality of the programs, the impact of the programs, obviously that's what we're here to achieve. Not just a lot of kids in seats. That's a great beginning, but they have to have quality programs, and that starts with the teachers. Our job is to make sure the teachers are supported and getting better all the time. Over the summer, we had a 3-day professional development program for teachers. Over 4,000 teachers participated. This fall, there's been continued training for pre-K teachers. 6,000 pre-K teachers have been a part of that training. This is something Carmen Farina believes in so deeply, the constant improvement, constant work to help our teachers be better. Our teachers believe in it too, and they're acting on it. We provide a lot of support at the schools as well. In each of the community-based early childhood centers, each of the different sites where our pre-K programs exist, they've each had a visit from an instructional coordinator, checking on how they're doing, giving them advice, helping them get better. That will happen continually throughout the year. And the training and the support has an impact, and we have teachers who really believe in what can be done at the early childhood level. A lot of people who really yearn to serve, particularly at this level. You're going to hear from Al Long in a moment, who teaches the new pre-K class here at Spruce Street. You're going to hear the passion he has. So when you have educators like Al, who's a great educator, by the way, has a background in stand-up comedy. You'll hear about that. And he performs with that passion for his students every day. There are a lot of people who are great teachers already, but the fact that we're going to support them and help them become better, and they want to get even better all the time, is part of what makes this work so well. Remember, teachers like Al, they're teaching these kids how to learn. This is what's so powerful about the pre-K level. It's the first chance most kids get to learn how to learn how to embrace education, to learn about numbers and alphabet and all the things that will be the foundation for all their education up ahead, and to learn how to be in a classroom setting, to listen, to respond to the teachers, to work with others, to participate. It all begins at pre-K. It's the building blocks for lifelong learning. This is what happens in pre-K. Each additional child who gets into a pre-K seat gets that foundation. Next year is as exciting, in some ways even more exciting, when we're going to reach every child in New York City at pre-K age who's ready to take up a seat. There will be a seat for literally every child. That's part 2, and that's going to be done with the support of all the folks here. And that's going to be a day when we take yet another step forward for this city. So pre-K for all is something that benefits each and every child who participates, benefits family, benefits the entire school system, makes the school system stronger, and it's only going to get bigger and better. A word in español. Hoy estoy anunciando que más de 53,000 niños están inscritos en el programa de pre-kinder de la ciudad que expandimos este año. El próximo septiembre, cada niño de 4 años en nuestra ciudad tendrá acceso a un programa de pre-kinder de alta calidad. And gratis. It's free. Very important point. I'd like you to hear first from our chancellor. She has been doing so much to make our schools better. And again, someone who started at the beginning as a teacher, great principal, understood through her work what early childhood education does for our kids. Our chancellor, Carmen Farina.
Well, first of all, I want to say that this is a great moment. Speaking to Nancy a little while ago, I asked her if she sees a big difference between half day and full day, and she says unbelievable. Kids, I mean, sometimes a little bit of a strain on the teacher because you have to keep going a longer day, and 4-year-olds are 4-year-olds. But the stamina, the focus, the ability to see things through, not in a rushed way, but in a more relaxed way, these are all the things that are going to make for successful students in other grades, and it's really important. And the other thing that I think is particularly true of pre-K, that parents are not in any way threatened to come into schools when their kids are 4 years old. And we want them to get into the habit of coming into school often and stay long. And I think in pre-K, it's the best time for parents to come in, visit classrooms, and then stay to do even more with their kids. And I'll just say a little bit about one pre-K, because I never used to visit pre-K classrooms when I visited schools. It wasn't my area. And now, of course, every time I go, everybody wants to show me their pre-K. But I went to see a CBEC a few weeks ago, and something happened there that I think is particularly wonderful about when you have a full-day program. The kids had done some experiments, science experiments, and the teacher was asking them some questions. And normally teachers are very impatient, and when they ask questions, if the kids don't get it, they answer them themselves, or they pick on someone who knows the answer rather than wait for the child who's still struggling. And that teacher waited with pause until every kid was able to answer the question on their own. Full-day pre-K gives us the opportunity for kids to think through problems, come up with answers in their own, and feel very self-confident. So I'm thrilled with having all-day pre-K. Thank you. Oh, en español.
Keep doing this until she gets it.
Okay. La cosa más importante de tener pre-K todo el día es que los chiquillos pueden aprender en una manera más relajada y pueden aprender de una manera que pueden estudiar cosas con más calidad. Y también queremos que los padres de chiquillos que vengan a la escuela con más frecuencia y que también vengan de noche a aprender cómo poder ayudar a los chiquillos en casa. Cuando los chiquillos son más avanzados en edad, muchas veces los padres no quieren venir a la escuela, pero cuando tienes un niño de 4 años, es mucho más fácil venir a la escuela y a trabajar con su hijo y aprender cómo ayudarles en casa.
Gracias.
Okay.
All right. Great in both languages. Well, again, we would literally not be standing in this school if Shelley Silver hadn't worked so hard to make it a reality, that this great school would be built. And we wouldn't have a pre-K for all if he hadn't started the idea long ago and seen it through to completion this year. Our Speaker of the State Assembly, Shelley Silver.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your kind words, and thank you for acknowledging something that the Assembly majority has worked to establish throughout the state of New York, and that is universal pre-K. I also want to thank the chair of the Assembly Committee on Education, Assemblywoman Kathy Nolan, for her tremendous leadership on this issue as well. She is a dynamo when it comes to children in the public schools of the city of New York. She has a personal interest in making sure that we do the best we can for our children in the city of New York, and her work in Albany expresses that just about every day. Before I do continue, I just want to say how delighted I am to be here at the Spruce Street School, which is a wonderful center for learning that I and members of our school overcrowding task force worked tirelessly to have built in this community. And I want to thank our principal, Nancy Harris, for hosting us this afternoon. Mr. Mayor, this announcement is a tremendous victory for our children and a real testament to your leadership, to your drive, and to your determination. Universal pre-K has been a long-time priority for us in the Assembly, and you made it the centerpiece of your winning mayoral campaign in 2013. Governor Cuomo and the state legislature listened, and following the lead of the Assembly majority, we agreed to invest $1.5 billion to establish a statewide full-day pre-K program, $300 million of which goes to the city this year and each of the next 4 years thereafter. You said that your administration would more than double the existing UPK enrollment in year one. And unquestionably, you have worked hard to meet that target, and you have succeeded admirably. A heartfelt congratulations to you, to Chancellor Farina, to Deputy Mayor Richard Bury, to ACS Commissioner Gladys Carrion, and to all the members of your team for this enormous achievement. I am leaving out your budget director because he only writes the checks after the fact.
Yeah, put him in his place.
But let me also take a moment to applaud the parents for recognizing the benefits of quality pre-kindergarten programs and for giving their children the critical boost toward higher math and reading scores and toward long-term academic achievement. That's what we hoped for 17 years ago when we won the fight to establish and to fund universal pre-K throughout the Empire State. Because the class of 2028 is sitting in our pre-K classrooms right now, and while they are learning a great deal, they don't yet realize that they are already competing for the jobs of the future with children from around the globe. We must not fail our children now. Mayor, we look forward to continuing our joint mission of making high-quality UPK programs available to each and every 4-year-old. And we look forward to working with you to continuously improve public education in the city of New York for all of our children and all of its young people. Congratulations for this tremendous milestone, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for coming to Lower Manhattan to announce this success today.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Class of 2028. That's who I was hanging out with a few minutes ago. We've seen the future. Shelley has stuck with this goal for years. Cool, steady, focused, and that's part of why we're standing here. Sometimes it also helps to have just plain, powerful passion in pursuit of the cause. And when you want passion for children and for education, there's only one place to turn in Albany. The chair of the Assembly Education Committee and a great, great ally in this fight, and one of the reasons we won it, Assembly Member Kathy Nolan.
Oh, you're very kind. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, you're even going to let me step on Carmen's little step.
That's right, you got to step.
I want to thank Mayor de Blasio for those kind words, and to Deputy Mayor Bury and Chancellor Farina, who's just a hero to so many of us for her outstanding leadership, and most of all to Speaker Silver for even having me in his district in this wonderful school. I'm a little jealous, Shelley. This is a nice school. We'd like one in Ridgewood, too. But, you know, I want to say to the mayor, you know, a lot of congratulations. I say it all the time. An educated person is a person who has a chance for happiness. And in this effort to give children the first step on that road, to choose their life, to choose their career, to have a chance for happiness, we've is very kind. I have to say I was sometimes the skeptic, and the speaker never wavered, you know. This has been something that our majority, and he has led that fight for us for a very long time, and it actually has happened. I still sometimes can't believe it. The thought that there are over 50,000 youngsters, which is larger than any school district in the state, in all-day pre-K in our city, getting that chance for happiness is just a wonderful day. So I really want to thank everyone, and Shelley, you know how I feel about it. He's never wavered, and it was great to have the partnership, Mr. Mayor, with you. So thank you, everybody, very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kathy. And now, as advertised, part-time comic, full-time teacher, and great believer in pre-K. He's one of the people making it happen on the ground. Al Long.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm truly humbled to have the opportunity to share with you my experience in pre-K. When I think about my day-to-day experience in the pre-K classroom, I have to tell you, I get really, really excited. This excitement is shared by my students when I shake their hands every morning when I greet them. This can only be attributed to the joint feeling that we are going to have an amazing day, and we can't wait to learn together. The community in Spruce Street provides a culture of opportunities and people that enhance our learning. From learning from our school leaders to the custodial staff to the teachers and older students, our class is embraced by the people in our school. As a former science teacher, I was fortunate to teach the whole class, and I have that perspective. Seeing the many levels of learning and understanding about the world around us through the scientific lens, I began to see how truly important the beginning of school is for our young ones. The tactile, explorative, and high vocabulary functions of my science background have enhanced the classroom experience I've tried to provide for my pre-K now. In the class over the last month, we've had many conversations about learning about change and comparing and making observations. To start off a year-long observational experiment, we dissected a pumpkin. We discussed and made observational drawings on what we saw.
I didn't know you could dissect a pumpkin.
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
I wondered what
You
it
get
was.
right
I saw
into
it in the room. I
it. You
thought,
get
what are you
really
doing
into it.
there?
Yes.
Hands on.
That's it.
Under anesthesia.
Under anesthesia.
After we experienced the pumpkins, I placed them in a terrarium, and I set up a camera, and I taught them how to use the camera to take a picture every day. Then I proposed a question to the students gathered around the pumpkins, and I said, "What do you think will happen to the pumpkins inside there?" This fueled a few predictions and really excited answers, and I saw one student who was concentrating very hard, and she said, "The pumpkins will change like we change." When I saw these pumpkins through their eyes, I saw the new way of looking at the future. I'm always looking and learning from my students. Even in the short amount of time since the beginning of the year, I have seen my students grow and change. The way we express ourselves in confident ways, the way we have empathy towards each other, and the way we learn with other people in a functioning classroom has opened my eyes wider to see the effect of the classroom and the choices my students are making about their own education, the way they learn. At the end of the year, we will look at all the photographs of the pumpkin to see how the pumpkins have changed. My own learning about teaching can be attributed to my colleagues and the professional development opportunities I've had here at Spruce and through the Department of Education. Over the summer, I attended a UPK institute hosted at Queens College. The experience I had was enlightening to be unified in a unified learning environment presented by Bank Street. Listening and talking to my peers from all over the New York City, I felt that we were all in this together. From learning about classroom routines and weaving high-quality interactions in every moment with our students, I added many things to my own teaching style. My facilitator, Travis Wright, presented the material with stories, laughter, and deep wisdom. He said something that resonates every day the more I experience with my students in the classroom. He said, "I believe the power of children can change us." This is something that has carved my thoughts on my students' needs, wants, and thirsts for learning. Whether we're talking about pumpkins or people, change is inevitable. To guide our students at such an early age, to help them fall in love with learning, is what myself and my colleagues are doing every day across the city. I believe that every child should have this opportunity. I'm grateful to Mayor de Blasio, Chancellor Farina, Assemblyman Silver, Superintendent LeBoy, Principal Nancy, and the teachers who made their lives better. Universal Pre-K is changing the future, not only for our students, but for our city. Thank you.
You got some deep students there. The pumpkins are changing as we change. That's very lovely. Okay, we're going to take questions on this topic, and then we'll go to other topics. On this topic, yes.
Hi, can you talk to us, please, about where there are empty seats and where there are waiting lists? What neighborhoods may have one or the other?
Sure. I'll have Deputy Mayor Bury come up and say, we found in the beginning, we knew there were going to be some challenges, particularly where we already have overcrowding. Because where we already have overcrowding, we knew there would be an absence of space to accommodate pre-K. We found some success in school buildings, some success in community-based organizations, but that was one of the challenges at the beginning that we intend to resolve by next year when we go to an absolute universal system. So Rich will tell you those details, but that's the challenge we're working on right now.
Thank you. Yeah, as the mayor said, this plan has always been a 2-year plan. And so our goal is to make sure that by next year, every 4-year-old in New York City has access to full-day, high-quality pre-kindergarten. There are neighborhoods around the city where there was more demand than supply, and so that's part of what goes into our planning for next year. There are also neighborhoods in New York City where there is more supply than demand, and that goes into our planning for next year. So we always knew that there would be that would always happen this year, in part for the reason that the mayor said, in part that because we're sort of learning where the actual natural demand is. And so we're confident that with the information we have and with the additional time to work on it, we can continue to fulfill our promise to our 4-year-olds.
Can you just name a few of the neighborhoods specifically where there's
Central
more demand?
Queens. I think I have an amen
Western
here.
Queens.
And Western Queens, but Central
Yeah,
Queens
so
particularly.
so waiting lists, Central Queens, Lower Manhattan, all the neighborhoods you would expect based on population patterns. In neighborhoods where there are a bigger gap, in neighborhoods like Central Brooklyn, the community is an example of a community where there were some more seats than we had children this year. You're welcome.
And I just one other follow on that. I think there's also a process. The pre-K discussion last year in this really engaged a lot of parents to understand there was going to be a lot more availability and what it would mean for their children. But that's an ongoing discussion, and we're going to be doing that at the community level, working with elected officials, clergy, community leaders. There's still parents who do not yet fully understand what pre-K could do with their child. There's still parents who thought they couldn't get in. When you go to a system, again, this has been Shelley's dream for a long time, universal actually meaning universal, like every child guaranteed a full-day seat. I think that's going to immediately say to parents that they don't have to wonder. I've hastened to add, not every seat is going to be right down the block. I mean, some will take a little bit of travel, but it's going to be there for their child. That's going to change the attitude when it's a full guarantee. But I still think we have to do more to explain to some parents that it is different, than keeping a child home with a family member, let's say. Some parents prefer that, and they have that right. But I'm going to argue over the next year, I'm sure Richard will as well, that in fact you're going to give your child a much better start in the modern world if you get them into a full-day pre-K rather than having them stay home. Did you have one?
Oh, yeah. I was going to ask, so you added about 2,000 seats since the last time we
Correct.
talked about this in September. How many seats were added between September 4th and October 1st, and how many between October 1st, which I know is the state deadline, and today? And if there were a lot of seats added after October 1st, does the state still, are we still?
Yeah, and before Richard comes, I'll say the state has been very flexible because this was a brand new thing for everyone, for them, for us, and obviously we were partners with the state in this. We did not double pre-K. We did double and then some. We did 150% increase plus. We had about 20,000 seats full day as recently as June. So this was a huge, complicated undertaking with so many sites and all. The state understood that, and they were willing to be creative to make sure that we got the number right.
Sure. So I'm going to test my pre-K education because that was a multi-part question. So let me see if I can keep up with it. So as you point out, the majority of the seats were created by the first day of school in September. In terms of the seats that came on after that, the bulk of those additional seats came on in September, and then fewer came on after October. So we can get you the final breakdown, but the bulk of it happened during October. During September. So moving forward, the state, and as the mayor said, we're working very closely with the state. We talk every day. This is obviously a big expansion, not just for New York City, but for the state. And so we're working with the state to figure out how that reimbursement will work for seats that were available by, after October 1st. And our commitment, though, is that whatever seats the state is not able to reimburse, the city is prepared to reimburse the difference, but we continue to work with the state to figure out how that's going to work for the additional seats that came online in October.
And it's obviously a small number of seats. Please.
You've talked a lot about delivering high-quality pre-K, and I'm hearing from a lot of programs, you've hired 1,000 new teachers, and there's been a lot of motion with those teachers since September. Teachers have been leaving their jobs in a lot of centers, shifting around. Do you have numbers on teacher retention, and how does that kind of motion impact the quality?
Richard and Carmen may both want to speak to this. I must say I have not heard that report of a lot of. There's some natural shifting around by definition with kids, with teachers, because everything's settling down in the first weeks of school. What I think we found was a huge number of teachers who wanted to participate. Teachers from New York City, teachers from around the country wanted to be part of this pre-K expansion. But I don't think we've had an inordinate challenge with people moving around. But Richard or Carmen, you want to speak?
Sure. We're not aware of any inordinate movement of teachers out of pre-K classrooms. What we've seen, as the mayor said, is a real positive response to the opportunity of helping to build a strong full-day system here in New York City. We're also very proud of the enormous investments we've made in professional development. You know, as the mayor said, it's not just about having 53,000 4-year-olds in pre-kindergarten classrooms. It's about making sure that those 4-year-olds are having the kind of experience that's going to put them on the path to a positive education. And so in addition to the training that happened over the summer that Al described, you've already had 6,000 teachers from district schools, from CBEX, participate in training sessions already this fall. The instructional coaches at the Department of Education have already been out to visit every pre-kindergarten program in the system. We are absolutely committed to not only having the seats, but having the seats operate at a high degree of quality.
Let me have Carmen come up.
To be very honest, I've heard just the opposite. I've heard because of the extra attention to pre-K that principals in many cases for the first time are really focusing on the early childhood grades, and also that many of the teachers in our pre-K classes are teachers who requested to change from other grades, second grade, first grade, to go into the kindergarten pre-K. So like I said, I haven't heard it at all, and I do ask for surveys on a regular basis. So if you know something I don't know, let us know. Thank you.
We accept reports, yes.
There's already been mention of lower Manhattan neighborhoods like Barry Park City actually lost pre-K seats this year. As you go to full day universal next year, is there going to be any thought to perhaps putting a pre-K center in Tweed, and is there going to be any more consideration to maybe expanding the classroom space in Tweed?
I'll let Carmen speak to that. It certainly has not been part of the discussions to date. But I think the fact is, in general, we expect not only to find more spaces in community-based organizations. We will, over time, be creating pre-K centers in some locations. We'll be leasing space in some locations. School Construction Authority has the mandate to get us up to the level that we expect for next year. Now, we're still honing what we expect that exact number to be, but their mandate is to look at the areas where there was greater demand than available space and add additional space. And that's going to take a lot of different forms. But why don't you? And the Battery Park City point, I don't know if you have any, we can follow up on that.
There's a lot more seats here than they think. We have a school right now at Tweed. We anticipate when they move to their site that some of those classrooms will be set up for pre-K, and we look forward to having little 4-year-olds in the building. It'll really be a pleasure. And I think that some principals who are seeing the results of pre-K have all of a sudden found space for an additional pre-K next year. So my feeling is that most of the schools will be able to provide in most of the communities.
What about expanding the classroom space in Tweed? Speaker Silver and others have talked about one of the conference rooms, or is that?
We're working
on it.
Follow up. Okay, yes.
I'd like to ask the principal here how the program works here. How many students are enrolled here? How many students applied to get in here?
Sure.
And how many were turned away because there wasn't space for them?
Sure. So I don't have exact numbers of how many applied here. I can tell you in our one full-day section, we have 18 children enrolled. We have 4 half-day sections as well, which we've had since 2011. And we currently have gone through our entire wait list, and our classes are just about full. So we were able to accommodate any family that was interested, even if it meant calling them off the wait list.
Okay. Excellent. On topic. Anything else? Yes? Hold on, right here first. Then we'll come to you. Go ahead.
Are there any programs, in past years there's always been some programs, especially at the CBO level, that just have not had enough students in the fall to remain open? How many, are there any this year? How many programs?
Yeah, well, I think what we've found is, and I'll turn to Richard on this, but we've had some that we wanted to help them get to a better enrollment. In other words, every program that started on opening day on September 4th is open. But there's some we think still could potentially have a little bit of growth, and that's what we tried to work on over these last 2 months in particular, to see if we could pump them up some. So why don't you speak to that?
Sure. So absolutely. One of the reasons why we continued enrollment past October 1st is because there were still, we still had parents who wanted to sign up to programs, and we still had programs that had vacancies. So we're working very closely with all of our providers to make sure, including those who still have vacancies, to make sure that they're in stable financial positions. Over the course of the year, as you can imagine, things do happen, but we have not seen, and we're not anticipating, a large number of providers being forced to close for business reasons.
So right now, none have closed. You haven't closed a single class.
No.
Wait, I owe you one.
Do you know about how many seats are still open citywide?
How many seats are
Still open.
I think we've gotten to the end of the rainbow.
Yeah, there are, so around the city in different classrooms, different centers may have fewer kids and they're fully enrolled. But as of right now, we're not enrolling future kids, and so all those programs will be working with sort of the capacity they have right now.
This is somewhat on topic, education.
Let's see if we have actual on topic for a moment. Go ahead. Then we'll come right to you.
Speaker Silver, I was wondering if you could speak about how you're planning to guarantee financial support for pre-K in years to come.
Well, I think what we did last year was put in a 5-year authorization. So there currently is $300 million more for the city of New York in the next 4 budgets. And, we hope to continue and possibly expand that as the need is shown that we need more money. But it's a significant amount, fully funded by the state in those terms. So that's basically how we do it. It's there. It's just a matter of appropriation each year. The authorization is there.
Okay, on topic, we'll come to you one second. Anything else on this specific topic? Going once, going twice. You will bridge us now to off topic. Take us there.
I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about the increase in teacher tenure granted this year from last year, or if the chancellor could speak about it.
Yeah, let's have the chancellor speak to it, because that's what she does. Isn't that great?
I think that nationally it's pretty close to what the national numbers are, and also that it's something that's very carefully under review. We have put in a different way of evaluating teachers. I think with Common Core we have additional challenges. So I think one of the things that we certainly are anticipating with the new superintendents, that teacher quality is going to be looked at very, very closely. And again, we've added professional development back on the table. Many teachers were expected to do Common Core without any professional development whatsoever. So we have had a tremendous amount of interest in the last month. We've had over 900 principals attend professional development, and those principals are then expected to send their teachers. So we are looking for highly effective teachers, and I do not want to see any teacher in a classroom where the kids are not getting what they need. But this is something we're looking at very closely moving forward, and I do think professional development of the right kind is the answer.
Okay, continue on off topic.
Going off the op-ed you wrote in the Huffington Post, do you think a competitive Democratic primary in 2016 is good for the Democratic primary? Are you worried that divisive primary could be bad for someone like Hillary Clinton?
I think the point of the op-ed was not whether a primary per se is good or bad. It's that the Democratic Party has to represent its values. And a lot of what happened this year around the country was Democrats running away from democratic values, running away from progressive values, being unwilling to talk about economic reality, unwilling to offer a progressive vision of economic fairness. And I think that's what really undermined a lot of those candidates, because folks who even agreed with them in large measure didn't feel inspired to come out to vote. So I think that's the central question. It's not whether a primary, there's great arguments always made whether primaries are energizing and helpful to a party or harmful to party unity. I don't think that's the core of the issue. The core of the issue is, are Democrats going to come to grips with economic reality? If they do, they're in a position to win.
What do you think specifically about primaries? I mean, what do you think?
My view over the years has been that I do not fear them. Sometimes they can be very helpful in terms of preparing the candidate to be strong for the general election. Sometimes they're the best way to sort out who's the best candidate, but I don't think it's a hard and fast rule. I think it really depends on the situation. Much more important right now is Democrats getting back to democratic values. In the back.
The principal at Boys and Girls High School has recently been working with guidance counselors to offer, we have reports of more than 30 students to move out of the school some of which have said it's sort of been against their will and they've been urged out. I'm curious to know, like, if you agree with that policy. Maybe Chancellor Fariña can talk
I'm going to
about
have the
it.
Chancellor come up, but just to say on the big picture, as she does, change was really needed at that school. It's one of the strongest examples of the kind of changes that we intend to make through our Renewal Schools program. And in that case, the school needed new leadership. It will have new leadership. The school needs the opportunity to look at its whole team from scratch, to really start over. And that's the agreement the Chancellor won, to make sure that literally the entire team could be evaluated and decisions could be made about what will make that school strong. And it's a legendary school. It's a school that's done so much for Bed-Stuy and Brooklyn, but it needs a fundamental renovation of its approach, and the Chancellor is going to oversee that.
From a student population perspective?
Well, let me answer the question specifically that you asked, Jeff. In the first place, Michael Wiltshire, who's the principal there, has already done a turnaround in Medgar Evers Prep. When he took it over, it wasn't what it is today, and he has really good, strong experience in what it needs to turn around school. When I heard the rumor about him getting students to leave, it wasn't quite what it appeared. So let me be very clear. Many of the students at Boys and Girls Prep and several of our other high schools are over age and undercredited. The fact that they will graduate on time is little to nothing in terms of their age. And so he had a transfer school fair at the building where he asked students to come and visit with their parents or by themselves to see what other opportunities are there in transfer schools. And many, maybe half of the kids took them up and others didn't. It was a free choice. It was not obligatory. It was simply to say there are other opportunities. There is a transfer school in that same building. They wouldn't have to go that far, who is willing to take these students on and has special strategies, including a lot more support to work with families. So I also know that Good Shepherd Services, in connection with John Hopkins, is doing a phenomenal job at Boys and Girls High and is also taking on this issue. So it's not what it appears to be. It's a matter of, is this another chance, something else you might want to do? So to ensure that kids are getting on the right path as quickly as possible.
I want to comment just one related point. I'm just going to keep moving this way across, but you know, Chancellor came under some criticism from someone who, last I checked, was not an educator, Jack Welsh. I would say to Jack Welsh, he should stick to light bulbs. He fundamentally misinterpreted the situation with the Chancellor's choice of superintendents. She chose people who had tremendous history with turning around troubled schools, folks who dealt with troubled schools. If you want people who have never been near a troubled school, you can find those people. But if you want people who are actually going to help turn our school system around, you need people who have gotten their hands dirty fixing the problem and rolled up their sleeves and dealt with it. And that's what the Chancellor did. So I just want to say I thought that was a real misunderstanding of what's being done here from someone who clearly is not an educator.
Mr. Mayor, we reported last night on a group of women, almost 10 of them, that we were able to document begging with small infants and toddlers all over Midtown. We've heard reports since last night that there are more of them in downtown New York. They're refusing social services help. They're refusing shelter. They want people's cash. Wondering if you'd like to see more enforcement by the police of the existing laws. What do you think about it? And
well, I appreciated that report a lot, and as a parent, I was very, very troubled because obviously we don't have all the facts, but if it's even possible that parents are using their babies as pawns to get people to give them donations, that's horrendous and deeply unfair to those children. So as a parent, I'm really troubled by it. We need to get all the facts. NYPD is on the situation right now. If we find any evidence of a conspiracy or a coordinated effort, there will clearly be enforcement. But I want to remind all New Yorkers, if you come across someone, look, we all have that instinct to help someone in need. The best thing we can do is connect people to the services they need. If they are honestly in need, and that's not a scam, they really are in need, call 311, help them get the services they need. That's the productive way to do it.
even if it's not organized, your thoughts about someone begging on the street, is that something you think should be allowed, given that there are...
We always want to get people to social services. We know there are some people, for whatever reasons, potentially including mental health reasons, that don't choose to take advantage of social services. That's a challenge. I think every parent, no matter what their situation, should first and foremost protect their child, so you don't take a child out into the elements, particularly as it's getting colder, and use them as part of begging. But I do understand some people may feel driven to desperation. That's one thing. We can help them. We need them to give us a chance to help them with our Department of Homeless Services and Administration for Children's Services. But the folks who are actually scamming their fellow New Yorkers and using their children as pawns, that's disgusting. Dave.
Mayor, I know your office put a statement out earlier today about you being late to the Flight 587 Memorial, and I understand the fog was the reason, but we all saw the fog early this morning when we woke up, and I'm just wondering, why not take a different mode of transportation, or maybe leave a little bit earlier?
No, I think that's absolutely my responsibility. I want to be clear. Everyone else in the process, I think, did their job well. It's a combination of things. The fog was unexpected, and it did slow us down quite a bit. Previously, we had used the boat to go to certain places, and it was the faster alternative. But it's also my fault because I was just not feeling well this morning. I had a very rough night and woke up sluggish, and I should have gotten myself moving quicker. And so the folks out there, obviously, I have a lot of respect for them, and I wanted to be there with them, and I was honored to be there with them. And I know those families have gone through so much over 13 years, so I wanted to be a part of it. But absolutely, that's my responsibility.
I don't mean to pry, but why was last night a
Just woke up in the middle of the night, couldn't get back to sleep, and felt really sluggish and off kilter this morning.
I was actually going to have the same question.
Okay.
But you said the weather was pretty bad. Did you guys take that into account, or did it catch you by surprise?
I think fog is one of those things that kind of don't exactly get a stable situation. So again, the previous efforts to use the boat, which we've only done selectively, but they've been proven to be a real time saver. Unfortunately, this time the fog caught us off guard. But again, I take absolute responsibility. I think everyone else did their job, and I take responsibility. Yes.
I wanted to ask you, I know the legislation hasn't been introduced yet, but just generally speaking, curious what you think of the notion of requiring police officers to get either written or audio permission from suspects before they search the suspect or their belongings or vehicles or homes.
Well, you know, that legislation was put forward last year. I don't know if what's been put forward now is the same exact wording or not, so I haven't seen the latest version of it. But I had some concerns then. I certainly have concerns now. You know, we obviously have to protect the rights of our people, but we also have to make sure that we're not in any way undermining the ability of law enforcement to do its job. So I have some concerns that, you know, I need to hear answered in this process.
This legislation hasn't been introduced either, but Roy Lansman is introducing a bill that would make chokeholds a misdemeanor. I was wondering if you had any thoughts about that notion. I know.
Well, he's referring to in the case of police officers specifically, correct?
I believe so,
yeah.
But
No, I've spoken to this before. I think the best way to handle that is through NYPD policy. And what's going to happen now is the retraining of the entire police department on a variety of approaches, including the fact that the chokehold is not an appropriate tool to use. But I've also said publicly, and I'll say it again, there are some exceptional situations, and I want to respect our men and women in uniform who may be put into a life and death situation, literally one-on-one, them and a perpetrator who could literally mean to kill them, and they have to defend themselves, and that might involve a chokehold. And so I don't think it should be made a matter of a legal prohibition. I think it should be handled by department policy. Yes.
Mr. Mayor, so are you apologizing to the families of the people who
I apologize to them out there. Yes, I'll apologize again, absolutely. And again, I say it's all my responsibility.
Mr. Mayor, at a community meeting this week regarding the proposed South Street Seaport Development Project, Margaret Chin said that she had heard that you had taken a personal interest in preserving the historic ships at the museum there. And I want to see if that was true. And also the broader question of whether a tower adjacent to the historic district, do you think that's appropriate or not?
I don't have a philosophical prohibition in my mind about putting a tower next to a historical district. It's New York City. I mean, throughout this city, we have some extraordinary modern buildings right next to historic buildings. I don't think there's any contradiction. It's absolutely, and by the way, it's all case by case. So the attitude we're going to take, I've said we need to have much more affordable housing. In some cases, that's going to take taller and denser buildings, but it always is about the specific site and if the specific site is appropriate, and it's always going to be something we do working with community members. But in this case, to the previous point, I think the Seaport Museum is really crucial to this city. I think it has to be protected because this is how New York City became New York City. We're the ultimate maritime city. We're here because of the water and because of the maritime industry, and I think it's really important that future generations feel that. So protecting the museum in some form is something I care about a lot.
Just
just want to go back to the op-ed for a minute. There are some progressive Democrats in New York who feel the same way about the governor that you feel about national Democrats, that he's not committed enough to a progressive agenda, talking about income inequality and so forth. I was just wondering if you see any parallel between those two criticisms, if you think any of that is fair.
Look, I think there are different situations that happen around the country. Obviously, I was referring to Democrats who lost because they didn't speak to economic issues, and I'm very happy that Governor Cuomo prevailed, and I supported him strongly. But my message is to all Democrats. We have to get to the economics. We have to talk about economics. We have to talk about people's standard of living. We have to talk about what's happened to the middle class. I would urge all Democrats to do that, because if we don't do that, fewer and fewer people will see anything meaningful in this party, and they'll vote with their feet. They won't even necessarily vote against the Democrats. They will just stay home. So I think it's something that all of us have responsibility for.
There were some state Senate Democratic candidates that you supported who lost. Do you think they also didn't talk enough about it?
You know, I was asked a variation. You may have asked me this the other day. I think Mark Panepinto, who won, who took back a seat from the Republicans, did the best job of all the candidates who were in the tight races of talking about real economic reality. Talk about taking on big corporations, a bit unfair to Western New York. He talked about ways to increase wages and benefits for people who are struggling. He went right at the heart of the matter. He talked about the inequality crisis. He won where he wasn't supposed to win. I think other candidates didn't do as good a job of that.
Just a quick follow-up on the op-ed. You know, in the piece you prescribed a forceful embrace of progressive principles by Democrats. You know, here in the city, there are some liberals who are encouraging you to take what they say is a more forceful approach to police reform, and the two council bills that were just mentioned now come to mind with that. I'm just curious how you balance, you know, there are liberal groups that want you to go even further in your agenda. Are some liberals just impossible to please? I'm just curious how you balance that.
Look, let me separate. I think there's 2 points. There's always going to be voices, advocates, activists calling for you to do more on a whole host of issues. There'll always be people who say everything you do is going too far. So that's kind of comes with the woodwork. I respect all of them, but that is a kind of a fixed reality. On police reform, I could not be more proud. I think we have the best police commissioner in the country who's committed to reform, retraining the force, great reduction in stops, what we're doing in terms of reforming marijuana policy. You know, you go up and down the line. We have a new IG. We have a reinvigorated CCRB. This is in 10 months' time. So I would say to any of my critics, with respect, those who think we have not moved fast enough, I'd say look at any other 10-month time frame in New York City government history and tell me where you've seen more movement in terms of real progress in police-community relations and reforming the NYPD. On the bigger point, I would separate fully, and I appreciate the question because it really gets to what I'm trying to say in the op-ed. If it's not economics, it isn't the first topic of discussion. Everything else matters. A whole host of issues matter. But where Democrats fell down is when they didn't talk about people's economic reality and they didn't offer a forceful, progressive solution. It's as simple as that. If you're not willing to talk about how to create more jobs, even if it discomfits the powerful and big corporations, if you're not willing to talk about how we're going to raise wages and benefits, including by legislative means and governmental mandates, if you're not willing to actually talk about how people are going to be able to feed their families, get to the middle class, stay in the middle class, and do better by the next generation, you're kidding yourself. And you're not a Democrat. You know, a Democrat is supposed to speak to those issues. And so from my point of view, if you look at what happened, I said in the op-ed, Al Franken is a great example. Minnesota is a state that's had Republican governors, Republican senators, all in recent time. It's become a swing state. Al Franken stuck to his guns, talked about economic reality, talked about progressive solutions, won handily. But in nearby states where Democrats couldn't find their true values and couldn't speak about them or couldn't even acknowledge whether they had voted for the President of the United States, you know, it's no surprise that people didn't see the real thing, so they didn't vote. You know, Howard Dean had a great formulation 10 years ago when he said he's from the Democratic wing of the Democratic Party. You know, I think that's what people are looking for. They're looking for actual, consistent values, and that's what will motivate them to vote. Anything short of that won't.
Let's go, guys.
Did you have something or not?
Well, I did. It was part of the same issue. And I guess, what would you say to those who say, well, it's easy for you to take this position because you're in New York City, which is maybe the bluest of the blue big cities in this country?
So that's a fair question. So this blue city, which had a Republican mayor for the last 20 years, or you could maybe be more creative and say, in the case of Mayor Bloomberg, someone who was a Democrat became a Republican, became an independent, but certainly at the time he was mayor wasn't a Democrat. Rudy Giuliani was a forceful Republican. So 20 years without a Democratic mayor. I believe some of why we broke through last year was because we spoke to people's economic reality. The whole concept of the campaign was to say we're living a tale of two cities. The whole concept of the campaign was to say we have to address income inequality, and we'll do it with forceful means. And again, if some wealthy and powerful people feel discomfited, it's no offense to them. It's what we have to do for our city. And by the way, I would say the same for our nation, that we have to change. I said this a lot last year, we're on a dangerous path. If inequality continues to grow, this is not going to be a strong and stable nation. Our competitors will surpass us. I said that last year. I want to say, you've heard this year a chorus of voices. They're not the voices you would have expected, for example, Democratic Senate candidates around the country. It's Janet Yellen, the head of the Federal Reserve. It's Lloyd Blankfein, the CEO of Goldman Sachs, are sounding the alarm on income inequality. But Democrats didn't. And I think the people paid them back for it. I think the people said, if you're not going to speak to these issues, we're not going to turn out for you. And that's what happened. And so it's a cautionary tale. It's an alarm bell. This is the chance for Democrats to get it right, and they should start right now with this next congressional term fighting for the right things, and that may restore the faith of the American people looking towards 2016. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you very much for including me. Now Trail is